if Rajaji was a believer, Bertrand Russell was a non-believer. I had the pleasure of jotting down the essence of his views from his book Why I Am Not a Christian and Unpopular Essays in the 80s. It is seldom that a philosopher can simultaneously display intellectual brilliance and humor. Lord Russell has been mainly concerned with showing how dogmatic authority in its innumerable forms has been and still remains one of the great obstacles to human advancement in terms of an increase in scientific knowledge on the one hand and a decrease in human misery on the other. The message beneath the humor is deadly serious. Solve the ancient problem of how men can live together in peace. In his Nobel Prize lecture, Lord Russell says, the fundamental motives that appeal to most men are acquisitiveness, vanity, rivalry, and love of power. The psychology of mob dynamics is an essential part in the education of successful political leaders. The political leader who can convince the populace that he can satisfy their desires can sway away masses of men to believe that 2 and 2 are 5 and his authority is divinely sanctioned. Vanity is a motive of immense potency. On one occasion, Russell says, I had a visit from the emperor and the pope simultaneously. I took them to the top of tower to see the view, and I neglected the opportunity to throw them both down, which would have given me immortal fame. Experience shows that escape from boredom is one of the really powerful desires of all human beings. What vanity needs for satisfaction is glory, and it is easy to have glory without power. The people who enjoy the greatest glory in the United States are film stars, but they can be put in their place by the Committee for Un-American Activities, which enjoys no glory whatever. A savage will manage to commit adultery with a woman while her husband is asleep beside her. This situation, I imagine, is not boring. But with the coming of agriculture, life began to grow dull, except of course for the aristocrats who remained and still remain in the hunting stage. To an elderly Victorian man, a woman's ankles were sufficient stimulus, whereas a modern man remains unmoved by anything up to the thigh. This is merely a question of fashion in clothing. If nakedness were the fashion, it would cease to excite us and women would be forced, as in certain savage tribes, to adopt clothing as a means of making themselves sexually attractive. In Lisbon, when heretics were publicly burned, it sometimes happened that one of them, by a particularly edifying recantation, would be granted the boon of being strangled before being put into the flames. This would make the spectators so furious that the authorities had great difficulty in preventing them from lynching the penitent and burning him on their own account. The spectacle of the writhing torments of the victims was in fact one of the pleasures to which the populace looked forward to enliven a somewhat drab existence. He is brutally frank. I cannot doubt that this pleasure greatly contributed to the general belief that the burning of heretics was a righteous act. The same sort of thing applies to war. People who are vigorous and brutal often find war enjoyable, provided that it is a victorious war and that there is not too much interference with rape and plunder. This is a great help in persuading people that wars are righteous. This is from his unpopular essays. The moralists, on the other hand, are immensely impressed with the seriousness of all the permitted outlets of the love of excitement. The seriousness, however, in their minds is that of sin. Dance halls, cinemas, this age of jazz are all, if we may believe our ears, gateways to hell, and we should be better employed sitting at home contemplating our sins. You must not kill your neighbor, whom perhaps you immensely hate, but by a little propaganda, this hate can be transferred to some foreign nation against whom all your murderous impulses become patriotic heroism. Those who claim that religious freedom is a necessary condition for a democratic society sometimes forget that tolerance means more than a concordance between the adherents of rival creeds. Religious liberty implies equal tolerance towards those who profess no dogma whatever. Religion, if it is not to be harmful, must be free of dangerous elements, suspicion, fear and hate, which lead step by step to organized persecution. Although we are taught the Copernican astronomy in our textbooks, it has not yet penetrated to our religion or our mass and has not even succeeded in destroying belief in astrology. People still think that the divine plan has special reference to human beings and that a special providence not only looks after the good but also punishes the wicked. I am sometimes shocked by the blasphemies of those who think themselves pious. For instance, the nuns who never take bath without wearing a bathrobe all the time. When asked why, since no man can see them, they reply, "Oh, but you forget the good God." Apparently, they conceive of the deity as a peeping Tom whose omnipresence enables him to see through bathroom walls but who is foiled by bathrobes. This view strikes me as curious. Christians hold that their faith does good, but other faiths do positive harm. What I wish to maintain is that all faiths do harm. The raw fruits of the earth were made for human sustenance. Even the tails of rabbits, according to some theologians, have a purpose, namely to make it easier to spot victims, to shoot them. There are, it is true, some inconveniences. Lions and tigers are too fierce. The summer is too hot and the winter is too cold. But these things only began after Adam ate the apple. Before that, all animals were vegetarians and the season was always spring. If our Adam had been content with peaches and grapes and pears and pineapples, these blessings would still be ours. Man is a feeble creature to whom only submission and worship are becoming. Pride is insolence and belief in human power is unpiety. An omnipotent being who created a world containing evil not due to sin but must himself be at least partially evil. The advocates of religious faith tend to think that certain kinds of fear are not to be deprecated. Insofar as religion makes its appeal to fear, it is lowering human dignity. When you hear people in church debasing themselves and saying that they are miserable sinners and all the rest of it, it seems contemptible and not worthy of self-respecting human beings. We ought to stand up and look the world frankly in the face. We ought to make the best we can of the world, and if it is not so good as we wish, after all it will be better than what these others have made of it in all these ages. A good world needs knowledge, kindliness, human feelings and courage. It does not need a regretful hankering after the past or a fettering of the free intelligence by the words uttered long ago by ignorant men. Scriptures say that before going to heaven, man would have to spend some time, perhaps a very long time, suffering the pains of purgatory. Priests could shorten this time by saying masses for his soul, which they were willing to do for a suitable money payment.